On today's episode of Big Time, the podcast, brought to you by Big Time Sports, we're venturing into a whole new sport that we've never talked about before here on Big Time. It's another professional athlete here on Big Time, and he's also a big timer in his own right. From Madawaska, Maine, we got John Clavette on today's episode of Big Time. Let's go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another round of Big Time, the podcast. The podcast we call Big Time. And we're diving into a whole new world today. Our guest today is another professional athlete. We're going big time for season 5. We're getting pro athletes on the podcast now. Born and raised in Madawaska, Maine, he's now on the professional cornhole scene. Ladies and gentlemen, we got John Clavette joining us tonight on Big Time. John, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. So, as I mentioned off the top, cornhole, we're going to get to that a little bit later because I'm guessing that's probably something you found a little bit later on in life, right? That's not something that you...
It's very recent.
Yeah.
Very recent. Yeah.
And I can only think of like cornhole being around like the last like 5 or 6 years. Like I'm guessing it wasn't a thing when you were growing up. Definitely wasn't a thing when I was growing up.
No, I think college played a couple times here and there. Nothing serious, but someone's backyard kind of deal.
Yeah. So we'll get into it eventually here, but we're gonna do like we always do here in Big Time. We're gonna start from the beginning, work our way through the years, see what type of stuff we can dig up and what type of stuff we can remember. So, as I mentioned off the top, Madawaska, born and raised into a pretty athletic family. The Clavette name out there holds some merit out there, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So I know your dad was a ball player. Like, was the family itself? I don't even know if your dad has brothers or what your aunts and uncles are like, but is the entire family itself athletic, or was your dad just pretty much the one?
My dad grew up with a bunch of sisters. He was the second youngest, so I don't really think they were super athletic. He was pretty serious about it, though. He played in the military, in the Army, with the Army team. He was a pretty good player.
Just basketball or other sports as well?
Pretty much just basketball is what he was serious about. I think he played baseball for a little bit, but I don't think he was as serious. He was very serious about basketball.
So I'm guessing that's kind of what you naturally saw growing up. Your dad was a basketball player. Was there any other sports in the house, or was it pretty much basketball growing up?
Soccer.
Soccer too?
Yeah. But not through my dad, or not really through any other means besides the fact that a friend of ours that was about 4 years older than us came home with a soccer ball, and he had joined the soccer team in high school, and we were much younger. Obviously, we were only in 5th grade at that point, and we started playing soccer in the backyard for hours on end.
And you mentioned us. So obviously, for those that don't know, those that are listening, you don't know who John Clavette is, the Clavette name. There's 4 of you, right? So
yeah,
Pete's the oldest, so you're the oldest.
Pete's the oldest.
All right. And what's the age gap there? How much older is Pete?
2 years.
All right. So you and Pete probably went through it together. And Andrew's not that much further behind you either, right? You guys are all pretty close in age.
5 years.
5. Okay.
And then Liz is 12.
Gotcha. So Liz is way on the back end, but so growing up, it was you and Pete. I'm guessing you guys did everything together.
Yep. Yeah.
Competitive household?
Yeah, it was pretty competitive. I don't know. I kind of kept to myself, so I didn't really. I mean, the great part is Pete used to bring by. We'd set our rim at about 8 feet, and he'd bring by friends, and they would play 2-on-1 against me in basketball, which was, in my mind, great practice. They'd love to just alley-oop and dunk over me and cheer and scream, and the whole time in my head I was like, I'm gonna stop these guys eventually. I'm gonna beat both of them.
Yeah, at some
by
point,
myself.
At some point, it's not gonna hit this forever.
Yeah.
So you guys were close enough. So you guys, I'm guessing, played on some of the same youth teams growing up, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, my dad used to run a 4th, 5th, and 6th grade basketball program, which I've noticed is a huge thing in our area. Basically, is getting kids started at a young age. So we did that a lot. What was the question?
Yeah, Just seeing if you and Pete probably played on some of the same teams growing up. I'm guessing like that really
Yeah,
young age.
yeah. In high school, our his senior year, my sophomore year, and then my freshman year and his junior year.
Gotcha. And so you mentioned your dad running the fourth, fifth, and sixth grade basketball in Madtown. Was that you guys' earliest introduction like to team sports in Madtown, or did you guys have stuff at younger ages?
Uh, it was a little bit earlier for us because we started. They had a really good at our rec department, a really good little league program.
Yeah.
So a lot of the parents and kids would go out for that. I started at a pretty young age at that, and then, I mean, I always played basketball as well because my father kind of introduced it to us.
Yeah.
But once he started those leagues, that's where we really got into it.
Did you follow your dad around to some of the local pickup basketball back in the day? Whenever he'd go play,
Oh,
were you tagging along, just hanging out in the gym?
men's basketball, man, was the place to be as a kid. I'll tell you, man. I used to. I mean, when I was really young, we used to go and we'd all the dads would bring us and we'd all be hanging out and they'd be playing their basketball. And I remember watching and stuff, but we used to go running through the school and the cafeteria and we'd go on play hide and go seek. Get the whole school to ourselves. We weren't supposed to be doing that, but
Yeah.
we did it.
Same exact thing at Fort Kent on Sunday mornings. Like I remember going with my dad, and like the men would play, and like the kids would just be hiding all over the entire building. And I think we
Yeah.
had just as much fun as they did. But the basketball was fun to watch too, though, right? I'm guessing there was some legends, maybe a little bit past their prime in Madawaska, but I'm guessing you got to see a lot of really good basketball for what
Yeah.
it is out there in Madawaska. Who were some of the names? Do you remember some of the names that played back then?
Of the older guys.
Yeah,
There?
the other guys.
Well, obviously my dad. There was Dick Michaud and um, Pierre Michaud's dad, Don Michaud, and Andre Michaud's dad, Will Cooper, Coop's dad.
Yeah.
A guy named Ron Tardif. He used to come in and I don't know, man. He used to wear like bands around his knees and bands around his elbows, like that old '80s basketball style. And he
Yeah.
was a very flashy player. Uh, wasn't one of the best ones there. Now that I look at him, I've played him since, and I mean, he was a good player, but it was just like it was that era, man.
Yeah.
The Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Dr. J had just been a big sensation. So these guys were all kind of emulating the games around that. It's a whole different game nowadays.
Absolutely, and I'm guessing there was a lot of foul language, a lot of French words, and just a lot of
Oh
bickering,
yeah,
right?
oh yeah, oh tap on that, yeah.
So you were going obviously to go see your dad play pickup and stuff like that at a young age too. Were you going to watch the high school games? Were you following the high school teams at all as a youngster?
Yeah, oh yeah. I my dad used to run the scoreboard at the varsity games,
Nice.
so I was pretty much at every single game you could ever imagine.
So I know a little bit about the history of basketball in the Valley, but
Yep.
I'm also not that old, so I don't. I know the '90s and the 2000s, but I'm guessing you would have saw some '80s high school basketball, right? Some early
Oh
'90s.
yeah, like Matt Rosingall.
Yeah.
I remember him coming to Madawaska, man. Holy cow!
What was that like?
Place? Oh, the place was electric. I mean, the gym was packed. Everybody wanted to see this guy, Matt Rosingall. I had heard about him through my dad, whatever, and so I was all excited, and all us kids were excited. And I mean, the gym was packed wall to wall. And I remember specifically they were doing their layups, and they allowed him to dunk the ball on the last layup, basically, which you're not supposed to be doing, really.
Yeah.
But so he went up, and I mean, it was this, shorter white dude, friggin' northern Mainer hick that just it was like, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he was pretty hairy guy back then. He had, if I remember correctly, I don't know if he had like a beard or a mustache or what he had going on,
It
but
was the '80s. It was a thing back then.
yeah, oh yeah, he looked like he was like 30. I swear to God. But love you, Matt. If you listen to this,
Any idea how many points he dropped that night?
oh boy,
I'm guessing a ton.
I'd have to look back, man. I was young.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the points. It was about just the flashiness and the excitement of it, I guess. I really don't remember.
Who were some of the bigger names from Madawaska? Like, does Madawaska have a proud high school basketball tradition? Because, like I said, I know the '90s, I know the 2000s, and I know a little bit of today. But how about the '80s and stuff like that?
From what I remember going to watch, I remember some of my idols were like Joey Keller. I don't know if you know Jimmy Keller, but his older brother, Jimmy, graduated with me. Um, Colin Gendro, uh, Debbie Gendro's older brother, she graduated with me as well. Um, I can't remember so long ago, man, but I remember going to watch those guys play, and those were I don't know, that's what inspired me to go, play basketball. That's what made me want to be out on that court, and I don't know, it got pretty exciting when you see it up live as a kid, and these guys are your idols. So long ago, though, man.
It's
I,
tough,
I
right?
don't remember all the names. Yeah,
It's
I
a
don't
long,
remember
long
all the
time.
names.
It's a long time ago now.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned fourth, fifth, and sixth grade rec. It was probably your first organized basketball. Did you guys travel at all, or was it strictly in Madawaska?
Strictly in Madawaska. It was down at the Acadia School. It was just, we were just learning how to dribble the ball and run up and down the court.
Right.
Not crowd the ball all the time, and I don't know. You know how that goes.
Yep. Take some time. You got to start off with the basics, the fundamentals.
Exactly, exactly.
Did you do any basketball camps growing up, or just
Yep.
strictly whatever? Yeah. Which ones you go to?
The one in Presque Isle, Cassavant.
That seems to be a big one.
Yep.
Everyone goes back to that one.
Yeah, that was really the biggest one we had in the area at that time for me, especially. I remember it was just a new thing for me.
Yeah.
They had just kind of started it, and Cassavant was running it, and yeah, I got pretty excited about that. That was fun.
You remember bumping into any players that you eventually wound up battling in high school? Like, you remember like running into people for the first time there, or was it kind of just
Oh
a
yeah,
blur? Yeah.
no, tons of them, man. The Keenans, I remember the Keenans, Kyle and Casey Keenan. Um, who else? Well, obviously Cassavant's son, Chris Cassavant,
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah.
and then yeah, there's a couple of them. And then who else? Lon, obviously, Berthium.
Yeah.
Uh, played against him a bunch there. Man, who else? Holy cow! So long ago.
It's tough.
You're like moving cobwebs right now.
Yeah. So, you obviously played those guys later on once you got to high school and stuff like that. But
Yep.
for Madawaska middle school, you guys played some of the other county teams, right? You
Yep.
guys. So that would have been your first exposure to kind of getting outside Madawaska, playing against some of these outside teams and stuff like that. Were you good early on, or was it something that came to you later on?
I mean, I was really good at street ball
Yeah.
when it came to playing, like in middle school, man. I played in sixth grade. He put me on the eighth grade team and barely played me. So I played more on the sixth and seventh grade team. And then in seventh grade, he put me in the eighth grade team, but just the eighth grade team. And halfway through the season, he barely played me. So I told him halfway through the season, I was like, listen, I'd like playing the seventh and sixth grade team, basically the JV of middle school,
Yeah.
because I want to play.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to travel around and sit on the eighth grade team and be like, oh, I'm on the eighth grade team, but I don't play. So it was iffy around then. Street ball wise, though, I could pretty much beat anybody at any point. I don't know what it was. Nerves, a lot of nerves. I experienced a lot of that with cornhole nowadays.
Yep.
I can learn how to, and I'm learning. Cornhole is one of those games where you just, it's all just focus, really. Anyone can throw a bag across a court, but nerves. So I didn't really play much. And then once I hit high school, my freshman year, the nerves kind of held through. And then finally, but I played varsity and I got some playing time. And then finally, my sophomore year, I was the starting point guard on the varsity team. And I kind of lost my nerves at that point because I didn't have a choice. Like I was playing.
So what year was freshman year for you?
Ooh, 89?
89. All right. So here we go. We're gonna hit high school here. So once you hit high school, 1989, Madawaska High. Were you just playing basketball, or were you playing soccer as well?
Soccer as well.
So Madawaska obviously has a proud soccer tradition.
Yeah.
What were the games like back then? Because people will tell you nowadays, actually everyone I speak to will always say the same thing. It was physical, it was rough, it was a different brand of soccer back then. I'm guessing it's the same way for you guys back there in the early 90s.
Especially amongst the Valley teams, man.
Yeah.
I think that's why we performed so well. We were all pretty tough players, Fort Kent, Van Buren, ourselves, Wisdom. Like we'd come out when we get to the playoffs, man. We'd come running out in a snowstorm. The other team was just like daunted by us because we're just used to that.
Right.
You know,
What position do you play in soccer?
Uh, I started my freshman year in the right wing position. Um, he alternated me sometimes to center, and then right wing back and forth. Um, and then as time progressed, once I got to my junior year, or no, my senior year, I ended up doing center halfback, unless we needed a goal for me in the front line.
You were the secret weapon they just called upon you when needed.
Maybe I don't know. Sometimes, hey, didn't always work, but sometimes it worked.
How were your soccer teams in high school?
We went my junior year, my senior year, undefeated until the playoffs.
Oh,
Yeah, we were really tough teams. My junior year, we made it to the state championship, and my senior year, we went undefeated and played our first prelim game. Only ended up from the ball and it went in the goal, and that was the end of it.
just like that.
Yeah, it's amazing how that happens.
Yeah, it tends. I want to say that actually happens more often than not, where like one of the Valley
Mm,
teams will get like a really really high ranking and just lose in the first round or a prelim game or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, well, were you? So you mentioned undefeated. So were you guys pretty much just taking care of business against all the Valley teams? Like obviously you guys went undefeated, so you beat Fort Kent, beat Van Buren, and stuff like that. Were they close
Van
games or were
Buren,
you,
Presque Isle.
yeah?
Yeah, Fort Kent was always a battle. Van Buren had a good team a couple of those years, definitely. But yeah, besides the Valley teams, we really kind of just ran through everybody else.
Were you guys Class B at that point?
No, see,
So you guys were still C. So you guys played a lot of county teams, and I'm guessing it was pretty much an all county schedule you guys played.
yeah, Holton, Ashland, Presque Isle, Caribou, um, Wisdom,
So
Fort
and
Kent, Van
yes,
Buren.
yeah, and you would have played against Lon Berthium's teams, and those Fort Kent teams were really good too. So those must have been some
Oh yeah,
serious battles.
oh yeah, yeah. Lon and I were we were friends early on. Basically, I think it was middle school. I used to go to his house and hang out, and he'd come to my house and hang out. So coming to high school was kind of a fun little rivalry with him. We
That seems to be the opposite of what's supposed to be. I would think you guys should have been just brutal enemies.
on the courts or on the fields, yeah, we were. Uh, him and I think junior year and senior year, he would always be the leading scorer in basketball in the Valley, and I'd be the leading scorer in soccer. Uh, that's basically how that went with him and I.
How would you describe your playing style as a soccer player?
Um, Speed.
Yeah, because you must have been. I mean, you're pretty tall for a soccer player, right? You're long and
Yep.
lanky, right?
I wasn't always this height, but yeah.
Okay.
Once I got to this height, I had already had the short man speed and strength, so I kind of just turned it into something a little longer.
Did you grow late?
My sophomore year is where I sprouted out. Yep. Um,
What'd you peak out at?
6'3".
6'3". Yeah. So yeah, I'm guessing you probably won a lot of balls in the air then, just all over the place, long, lanky.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was a point guard, so
That's crazy.
I wasn't
I didn't
really.
realize you played point guard in high school.
Yeah, uh, yeah. Basically,
Well, we'll finish up on soccer here before we get to basketball. But for soccer, you mentioned obviously crushing defeat your senior year when you guys were undefeated. Um, Obviously, some great battles with Fort Kent. Are there any other moments in your soccer career that kind of stand out looking back at it now?
I hit a half field shot against Ashland.
Was it in Ashland?
No, it was in Madawaska and it was pouring rain out. But I don't know, the goalie was pulled all the way up and I was at half field and I was like, meh, hey, you want to stand there, go for it. And I
And just nailed it.
cranked it over his head. It wasn't like a cranked shot where it went in the top 45 or anything like that, but
It went in.
it flew over, hit the penalty line basically just over his head and rolled in.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned Ashland, so and you guys played like pretty much an all county schedule. So I'm guessing you guys played some smaller schools as well. Are there any schools that kind of stick out to just being like just not a very fun place to play at?
I think the more competitive was the more fun for me. I loved playing in Fort Kent. Um, just the rivalry was basketball and soccer was
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. So I want to touch on the rivalry a little bit here. So obviously back then there was no lights for the soccer field. So all these games
Right.
were during the day, and kind of
Yep.
like the whole mystique about high school soccer in the county now is like Friday night lights, Friday night games under the lights, just that atmosphere. But
Hmm.
playing in the daytime was a little bit of a different atmosphere,
Yeah.
but still just as intense.
Yeah.
Do you prefer playing Madawaska or playing Fort Kent and Madawaska, or being on the road in Fort Kent?
Both. I got excited about. I mean, it's so close that our fans would travel and their fans would travel, so it didn't really matter.
You just like going up against those Warriors.
Yeah, I think it was more. We could have been on a outdoor court somewhere by ourselves, and I probably would have had just as much fun.
Yeah,
I think that's what I loved about it. It's like, I mean, it's nice having the audience there and the crowd, and that's always exciting. But I don't know, it's that competition that really drove me.
absolutely. Who was your soccer coach?
Uh, Mark Michaud in high school.
Legendary name right there.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
loved him as a coach because he would literally come to practice and say, "All right, scrimmage." He'd make two teams, and that's all we'd do. We'd scrimmage. I mean, what else are you gonna do? You got an undefeated team, and we're working well, and everybody's, the joints are all oiled. So we literally scrimmaged at practice all the time.
that's my kind of coach right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be nice to work on some skills and things like that. Little fine tuning. But we did that on our own, and that was kind of. I think he sensed that we all had that initiative. We all did it on our own. So when we showed up to the field, it was kind of like, "Hey, here's a ball, go for it."
Who were some of the other standouts you had on your team? Obviously, if you guys were undefeated your senior year, you guys had some really good teams. It wasn't just a one man show. I'm guessing there was a couple other
No,
standouts you guys
God,
had
no,
as well. Yeah,
no, it's a soccer team, man.
yeah.
Um, well, my junior year when we were undefeated, we had Pierre Michaud and Joey Canan was our goalie. He was phenomenal goalie. He got some accolades, I think, from the state. Uh, Mark Hebert, he was an amazing defender. Who else that year? And then our senior year, basically, we had Jimmy Keller, Ed Labatsu, Ricky Dewey, Kevin Sear, Don DeShane. Uh, yeah, there was a bunch of guys, man. I could go on naming all 11 players plus. It was a great team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's transition to the hardwood here, the basketball.
Yeah.
So I want to get into some of this stuff here. So freshman year, 1989. Your brother Pete, junior at the time. You make varsity as a freshman, or did you have to do your time and start off on the JV team?
I made varsity. I didn't play a lot on varsity, so I spent a lot of hours playing with the JV team. I ended up breaking my ankle towards near the end of the season, and then took me 4 weeks to heal, and then I was basically playing again with an air cast. So that was kind of a wash year for me. I didn't really get much done, and then my sophomore year is where I started.
Who was the high school coach for you guys?
It was Tim Doak.
Tim Doak was the coach.
Yeah.
How would you describe his coaching style?
Uh, he was a good coach. He was young.
I was going to say he must have
Uh,
been really young at that point.
yeah, yeah, he was very young. That would be one of my biggest complaints, but at the same time, he was a good coach, man. He meant well, and he knew his stuff. There was just a lot of not a lot, a little bit of drama here and there throughout the high school years, which yeah,
Typical.
it is what it is. High school kids, and a young coach, and so on and so forth. So, but yeah,
So you mentioned sophomore years, what kind of when you came into your own little
yep.
growth spurt, starting point guard. How were the teams anyway? Did you guys have some good teams?
We did. We made the tournament. Not that year, but the next year. That year we were led by, when I was a sophomore, we had Pierre Michaud and Joey Canan, Mark Hebert, and Ken Daly. Ken Daly was kind of the leader of the squad. Really good basketball player. Just a natural natural shooter, natural player, natural instinct. Um, and then my senior year, it was, but my junior year, we made it to the big show there, the tournament in Bangor.
Yeah.
It was Ken had graduated at that point, and we had Pierre Michaud, Scott Daigle, Mark Hebert, and Joey Canan, and myself. Which the whole starting team was over 6 feet, which is pretty awesome for a Valley team.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't see that very often.
No, no, it was pretty cool. Um, and yeah, they were all just great players, very interchangeable because of our height and men's basketball, born and raised in Madawaska. So we were all men's basketball kids. We had all had spent our childhoods watching our dads play. So it was just the culmination of all of that.
How would you describe the style of play back then? Obviously, the game has evolved. It's played a little bit differently today than it was back then. How did you guys play?
Uh, a lot of plays. Like our defense would be, drawn up plays. Our offense would be kind of pass and run away, pass, run away, pass, run away, pick and rolls, that kind of thing. It was very more structured than I see nowadays, where it's kind of like, all right, we'll give him the ball and everybody clear out kind of deal.
What was the atmosphere like at a Madawaska home game in the early 90s? I played in the 2000s. When I played, it was right when Madawaska got good again. I played a couple very intense games there, and the crowd was right into it. What was the atmosphere like back then for home games?
It was pretty intense. We had a cheerleading squad. The band would come every game pretty much. Then it was a pretty happening scene. Um, we had a really good crowd that would show up. Obviously, the dads that we watched when we were playing men's basketball all would come watch us play when we were playing high school basketball. Moms, so on and so forth. So it was pretty electric, man. It was pretty exciting.
And obviously, when the team's better, the crowd support seems to be a little bit better. More fans come out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then also, there's just a lot of good teams in the county. There's always been a lot of good teams, but at that time, I just know a lot of big names that were also playing at that time. Who were some of your big rivals? You mentioned Lon, obviously. We'll touch on that in a little bit, but who else was good at that time? You remember just going head to head with?
Uh, Sean St. Peter, Travis Delisle.
Travis Delisle, there's a name.
Oh yeah, man, I used to hate that guy. I mean, we're friends now, and I love him, but you know how that is.
Yeah.
I hear the conversations you've had on a couple of the podcasts about people hate certain people and blah blah blah. Um, yeah, mostly because Travis was just like a bull. Every time we had to play him, that guy was just a machine.
Even back then, huh?
Yeah. And I mean, I personally, my style of play was kind of being a machine myself, but I was a point guard and he was down low, so I didn't really deal with him that much. I mean, he was bigger than I was too, so whenever I got up next to him or near him and I got an elbow to the face or, a knee to the nuts, it was like, oh, I hate that guy. I hate him. He was just a machine, hard worker. Sean St. Peter, kind of the same mentality, and that kid could jump. Ryan Martin. I went to a couple of basketball camps with him, got to know him pretty well. That kid was a frog. That's what we called him at basketball camp the first time I met him.
Yeah.
The frog. Who else? Ryan Bolia from Van Buren was a tough player. He was like a man-child, man. The guy could manhandle you easily. Who else? Bobby Dahl from Holton was, I don't know, that guy was phenomenal. Just finesse and a very finesse player. Knew his game.
So you kind of came through at an interesting time because you came through and you played against some of the great players that were on their way out, like from the late '80s, and then also you got to play against a lot of the guys that were really good, like in the mid '90s as well. So you saw a bunch of players. You got to go against a lot of really good players.
Oh yeah.
Anyone in particular that you just love to go against? Who was the one player that you just circled on the calendar at the beginning of the year, like, all right, this is the game that I'm ready for?
I think it was Lon.
Yeah.
It was always Lon Berthium. Just because of our kinship and then that whole battle. And I mean, we went to Farmington we graduated, went to Farmington, and we're planning on playing ball together there too. So, but when I got on the court, he's the guy I wanted to beat. I loved playing against him.
See, and did you guys actually match up head to head? Were you guys guarding each other?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that,
I remember a game in Fort Kent, man. Show up there, the place is just jam packed with fans, whatnot, and the game starts. And Fort Kent, I believe, don't quote me on this. You can look up the game, but I don't know. Anyways, kind of to this feel. Fort Kent gets the tap. Lon comes down, shoots a 3-pointer, hits it. Crowd goes nuts right off the get go. We come down. I hit a 3-pointer. Crowd goes nuts. He comes back. Same thing. I think we went 3 for 3 from the 3-point line to start the game, back and forth. That was in our junior year. It was either 2 or 3 back-to-back 3-pointers to start the game off. That place was just, the rest of the game was just nuts.
and those are some high scoring games, right? Those weren't low scoring games. You guys put some points on the scoreboard there.
No, we ran some points up there.
So Lon was the guy you like to go head to head to.
I'd have to say.
I'm guessing Fort Kent's also just that team that you like going head to head against.
Yeah, just because they were consistently good. Like Wisdom had some good teams throughout the years, and Van Buren, same deal. And I'm not even going to go outside of the Valley because that was more like our core there. But Fort Kent always somehow managed to have some really good teams, and Madawaska did too. I mean, we had our weak moments here and there, but it was always a battle.
What year did you say you guys made the tournament?
We went to the tournament.
Yeah.
Yep.
What year was that?
That was 92?
92.
93, so probably in 93, I'm guessing.
What was your experience like at the auditorium? I know growing up, that's what pretty much all of us wanted. Like we figure, hey, if we can get to the auditorium, then I made it. What was your auditorium experience like?
The balls and the floor are really bouncy.
Yeah.
And I needed to have spent more time practicing in a gym where the backdrop was a lot further back.
It makes a difference, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, man. I experienced the same thing with cornhole now, man. It's like you play in certain places and the walls are tight, and you play in certain places where the walls are. You're in a field house, or you're in a casino, or it's just it's depth perception. It's tough.
Who'd you guys play in the tournament? Remember?
That's a good question.
Or did you guys go in as the higher seed or the lower seed?
I think we had just pulled it out and got in. No, we were medium seed. Actually, that year, my junior year, now that I think about it, Tony Tobin from Limestone was a ridiculous player. From Loring, actually, Limestone Loring. I don't even know what they call it or what they called it then, but kid was amazing. He basically led his team to, they won the whole thing. In the regular season, we had beat them twice. And so coming into the tournament, we'd actually done pretty well. We were probably, how many teams did they take?
8.
Okay, so I think we were probably 5th or 6th.
Yep.
Yeah. And then my sophomore year, when Ken Daly was playing with us, that was the close one that we had just barely made it into a prelim game, and we didn't win the prelim game.
No, that was it.
Yeah.
That's a tough way to go, especially your senior year like that.
Yeah. Yep. But such is life.
Yes, absolutely. Any accolades for you? I'm guessing all Valley team. They used to do that back then.
Yeah, and I got all state in soccer. Lon got the all New England. What I was told, and this could be right, could be wrong. I was like a vote behind him. So I could have been an all New England soccer player. My accolades in basketball were basically just the all Valley team, and not much more than that.
I've learned a lot today because I didn't even know you. Like I knew you kind of played soccer, but I didn't know you were a great soccer player. So
I was a better soccer player than I was a basketball player, and I was more serious about basketball. It's weird. I was more serious about basketball, and soccer was kind of my Zen sport. And I think
Nice.
that's why I did better at it. I
Yep.
just it was just Zen. Going back to cornhole once again, it's my Zen place now. I call it my yoga. I love to just go out and throw bags and relax, you know. And that was soccer for me back then. Basketball was the hey, my dad was a really good ball player. This is the serious family sport. This is what I got to do. And only later on, after I had gone to college, had I found that Zen in basketball and I became a way better player after I stopped playing basketball.
Nice. So after high school, did you get recruited for soccer? I know you said you went to Farmington. Did you play at
Yeah.
Farmington as well?
So I went to Farmington and then was supposed to play soccer. The whole purpose, I was rooming with Lon Berthium. We were gonna get I had a dorm room and we went early. I went out for the whole, you know, pre-game stuff for soccer and I was supposed to play on the soccer team. I'd
Yep.
already talked to the coach, everything. And I don't know. Going back to the whole Zen moment thing that I was just discussing with you was like I had been playing sports all my life. And I also on the side I played music, I was a musician, things like that. And I went to the whole 2 weeks before they did tryouts, and then when tryouts came I didn't try out. And the coach called me and I told him, I said, I think I'm going to put my focus on basketball. I think I'm going to take soccer off for this first year. I might play with you next year. And so put my focus on basketball. And as basketball started to come up, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of liking this not playing anything and having these responsibilities. So I took a break from basketball as well. Did the same thing, went to the tryouts to begin with, and then ended up playing in the field house basically about 6 to 7 hours a day after that by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where I improved the most. And towards the end of that year, I ended up transferring to Orono because I wanted to try to be a walk-on their team, which I went to Orono, a much better basketball player at that point, and didn't even try. I ended up meeting a bunch of musicians, and we started a band, and that I don't know.
That was
Took
the end
my
of your
life.
athletic career?
Huh?
That was the end of your athletic career right there?
Besides like playing men's basketball
Yeah.
here and there and pickup games, yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the band, and I wanted to touch on that too, because knew you as a basketball player, now know you as a soccer player, but also knew you were a musician, and still play music to this day, right? Here and
Uh,
there.
I've kind of hurt my wrist a little bit here in the last couple of years, and it's getting worse and worse. So I haven't really been able to play much guitar.
So, what was the band you started up in college?
It was a band called Strange Pleasure.
And it was just a bunch of guys you met at UMaine, you said?
Yeah, yeah. A guy that lived across from me had played bass and ended up responding to like back then it was newspapers. There was no email, there was no Facebook or anything like that. I responded to like an ad in the newspaper, the campus paper, and went and tried out for this band and came back and said, "Hey, they need a singer. Do you want to come down and sing?" So I started as a singer with them, but I also played piano and I played guitar um and so yeah, it worked out. We ended up playing our first battle of the bands 2 months later against this. The big band then was Brown Hornet out of Old Town Orono. They were kind of like a Rage Against the Machine band. They had won the last three battle of the bands, and we showed up and beat them.
No shit.
Yeah, 2 months of practice, but they were awesome though. That other band, Brown Hornet, was amazing.
What was your style of music? What were you guys playing?
Uh, it was a lot of like three-quarters original music, and the style's really hard to pin down, I guess. Beatle-esque, Allman Brothers-esque. Uh, Man, I don't know, all over the place, really.
Were you guys doing original music, or were you guys just doing covers?
Yeah, original music.
Nice.
I just said that, Tomas.
My bad. My bad.
Um,
I get wrapped up in it sometimes and I forget.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You probably have like a paper full of questions right in front of you right now. I know how this works.
So you guys win that battle of the bands, and then were you with the same band the whole time? I'm guessing you kind of were part of more than one, just more than one
Yeah,
band.
I did that for about 8 years. That was my formative years. We ended up moving downstate, playing Old Orchard, things like that. We ended up opening for like Godsmack at Bumstock and
Sure.
Rustic Overtones and some big bands. And then the fourth year we did Bumstock, we were the headliners, and we brought about 3,000 people, man. It was quite the feeling standing up there in front of 3,000 people that were there to see you. You know, it was
So
pretty exciting.
I've heard of that. I've heard of that, but where does that take place?
Right behind Somerset Hall, there's a big field there with a stage. That's where they used to run the bum stock. I don't think they do it anymore.
Yeah, I remember hearing that, but I haven't heard of it lately. So maybe it's not a thing they do anymore. But it used to be a pretty big deal, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, it was huge, man. They had some like the night we had opened for Godsmack. That was they had just gotten signed like 2 weeks before. So that field, there was about 10,000 people on that field. It was unbelievable.
Jeez.
And I was backstage right as they started their set, and they started with I don't know, I can't remember what song it was, but it was one of those like thrash up and down songs,
Yeah.
and there was 10,000 people just bouncing in unison, and it's foggy out. It was kind of misty, and I'm standing backstage by their friggin' camper, just like, oh, I want to do this forever and ever.
Was that the highlight? Was it the highest point music wise, or do you have another moment
No.
that kind of stands? So what else did you what else did you do?
Well, I don't know. There's a couple, but another great moment. Warren Haynes from the Allman Brothers came down and played with us down at a place called the Ale House in Portland. He showed up. They had a couple amps set up for him and a couple guitars, and he came in after playing a show at the State Theater and jammed out 4 tunes with us, a couple originals and a couple Red House by Jimi Hendrix, and a couple other tunes. That was pretty amazing. I played with John Popper from Blues Traveler up at Port City Music Hall.
Oh,
Well, I played
shit.
with him twice, but that one time was probably my favorite show. Got to hang out with him. I hung out with him for a couple hours backstage, and we talked. And pretty interesting dude.
Sounds like it.
He's a pretty interesting character.
Yeah.
I opened for the Marshall Tucker Band a couple times. I opened for Eddie Money. Got to play his grand piano at which is the Aura now, but it used to be called the Asylum.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've recorded backing vocals or backing instrumentalization on some bigger local bands in the area too, which have been kind of favorite moments for me. There's too many to even count. Um, just love doing it.
Yeah, so and Portland's got a great music scene. Is there
Uh,
one venue in particular that just kind of sticks out as your favorite? As kind of like if for one night only, if you could pick one place to play in Portland, what would it be?
Man, that's a tough question. I really like the Asylum, but now it's Aura, and I haven't played there since it's been Aura. So I did like the Asylum. Doesn't exist anymore. I'd have to say the Big Easy, but that also doesn't exist anymore. I mean, this is an era way back. Half the places I played don't even exist anymore.
Right.
But the Big Easy and the Ale House probably be my two favorites.
So when did the music scene or the music era kind of come to an end, and what kind of went into that thinking? It was time to do something different, or you mentioned your wrist and stuff like that. What kind of led to you going away from music?
Um, I never really went away. When my wrist started to hurt, I kind of slowed down playing as much by myself. And then a buddy of mine, one of my best friends who passed away this past year, about 5, 6 years ago, we played in a dodgeball league for Casca Bay Sports, and he ended up pulling his ACL. So he couldn't play dodgeball anymore. I kept doing the dodgeball thing for a little while longer. And then when his ACL finally was good enough where he could do something, he couldn't play dodgeball anymore. So he asked me if I wanted to play in a cornhole league with him. So I agreed, started playing cornhole, and the rest just happened. I couldn't stop playing.
So now,
um,
cornhole comes into the scene.
oh, yeah.
Had you had any experience prior? I'm guessing you might have played like in the backyard here and there, but still kind of new to the sport, right?
Yeah, yeah, fairly new. I mean, compared to a lot of the people that are playing in the Portland area right now, I've definitely have more years behind me.
Yep.
Compared to the guys from Massachusetts and Connecticut and New Hampshire. A lot of them have been playing as long as me, and we get a lot of our competition there. But Maine's got a pretty powerful scene, man.
Yeah, so it feels like it's coming on, especially as of late. You're starting to see it pop up more and more.
Yeah.
So take us through, how does one go from just playing cornhole in the backyard to getting on the professional cornhole scene? Let's
Well,
start from the beginning. How does that even happen?
well, I've been playing, like I said, for a while. I got pretty addicted to the sport. I play a lot of cornhole. Just last year alone, I think I had reached a point for maybe 3 or 4 months where I was playing between 7 and 9 hours a day. I just love it. I just
Yeah.
love to play. And going back to my Farmington years after I didn't play on the basketball team, I went and shot hoops for 6, 7 hours a day. And that's not even a joke. Like I literally went in there I'd watch some guy shooting and be like, well, I'm going to shoot till he's done. And then somebody else would come in while he was shooting. He'd leave and I'd be like, well, I'll keep shooting till this guy's done. Well, I kind of do the same thing with cornhole. It's like, well, somebody somewhere is throwing bags right now. And if I keep throwing, then I'm throwing more bags than them. And I don't know, I just get right into it.
Yep.
So I did that for that, that year and years prior. I had played in leagues, a couple leagues a week and so on and so forth. And then finally, about a year and a half ago, I started playing out in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and getting to see new competition, new people. And then the whole ACL thing came along where, I met one of the directors and he runs some regionals and conference tournaments. And so I just started going to do those and, gaining my points for the ACL, which is the American Cornhole League,
Yep.
which is what I just went pro in. And I don't know. I told myself when I started with the ACL about a year and a half ago, I told myself, hey, I love this so much. I'd like to go pro within 5 years. If I could pull that out, I'd love to be able to do that. And I don't know. I managed in my first year to get 129th in the nation and 11th in the conference. So I got offered pro status.
Yeah. So how does that work? Because you mentioned you were ranked, but now you're pro status. So is it kind of like you have to get like your pro card? Like do you have to like qualify or like get like a certain score or win like a certain tournament to get your pro card? Or
Nope.
do you just like announce
Nope, you have to rank in the top 160 nationally
okay.
in one given season, or the top 16 in your conference.
All right. So what's the conference that you play in?
We're the Northeast Conference, which is basically New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut. I think Rhode Island's part of it.
And so is there basically just like a season? Like yeah. Like, is there like
It's a year.
it's for a whole year? Okay.
Yeah, it starts in August through August.
August
So this
through
past
August.
August is where we had our final battle, whatnot, and then wherever your ranking is at that point, that's where you get either offered pro status or, yeah.
All right. So what's like do you guys play once a week or is it kind of like just set dates throughout the year or how does that work?
We have a league on Thursdays that usually happens every week throughout the winter. Just started recently. You should come down and shoot with us sometime. And then I run for the last couple of years. I've run a couple nights blind draws at different places. It's becoming a popular sport. So there's literally, especially here in Maine, which is great to see. There's almost a cornhole tournament almost every night, whether it's blind draw or bring your own partner kind of deal or a league play. Or there's a tournament almost all the time.
Yeah, because I've seen pictures online and it's like just a place that's just packed, which is from wall to wall, just everyone playing at the same time.
Yeah. It's in the camaraderie. The people I play with, I think that's one of my favorite parts about it, man. All these guys I've met a couple bad apples, but they don't really play in the bigger tournaments, I've had a guy kick birds at me before, but you go to these tournaments and these guys are like, I've developed a brotherhood, sisterhood, and I mean, there's some NAS players out there too. It's just great people, and our league especially. It's just I look forward to it every week. I get so excited just to see those people aged from 20 years old to 70, and just have fun people to be around. And there's always the aspect that you can drink while playing cornhole.
Oh, so yeah, I was going to say, yeah, you guys are allowed to drink while you play.
You're allowed to, yeah.
Okay, that makes it a little bit different than some of these other sports here. Then, so I'm guessing some people might get carried away and get super into it.
Yeah, I mean, the more you drink, obviously, the worse you do. Well, you do better, and then you do worse. So, I'm a little more controlled about it myself. When I first started, it was fun. I'd get a good buzz on and play cornhole, and it was fun. Now it's a different thing. So.
And you mentioned that the conferences, the Northeast and stuff like that. At any point, is there like a national tournament that you can go to? Like, is there like a national champion that's determined, or is it just based off rankings?
There are four.
It's four
4
national.
throughout the season. Yep.
Okay.
First one is in January in Florida. I know where the second one is, but I am not allowed to tell you at this point because
Top secret, huh?
it's a pro secret.
Well,
They'll come out with it next week.
We're always trying to break news here on Big Time. So if you want to give me like the inside scoops, I can kind of be the first to break it. That'd be awesome. We could talk.
Yeah, I'd probably lose my pro status if I did that.
We don't want that. So
No.
you mentioned last year you peaked at what rank?
120, 129, 127.
And do they update the ranks weekly or how does that work?
Nightly.
Nightly. So where are you at this season?
I haven't seen my national rank, and I'm not too concerned with it. So what they do is basically you have levels. You have your local level. They take your top 10 finishes locally, which is easy to do. If you get first place in a local tournament or whatnot, you get 30 points. They take your top 10. So by the end of the year, you play probably a couple hundred locals. It's easy to get your 300 points at that point. The regionals, they take your top 4. I've only played in 3. So my rank doesn't really matter right now. Conference-wise, I'm in 22nd.
Okay.
Nationally, I don't know. But it's so early in the season, and I haven't even played my max. You know, there's players out there who have played 5 or 6 regionals, and I've only played 3. So I haven't even reached my quota of 4 at this point.
Right.
And then nationals, they take your top national finish, and then conferences, which is one below, they take your top 2 conference finishes. So take it from there, I guess. There's a lot more local tournaments and then slightly less regional tournaments and even less conference tournaments, and then there's only 4 national tournaments. So the points are heavier for each different event, but you have extra chances to gain the points you want to gain.
So what's your goal for this upcoming season here? Obviously last year was a big deal. You got nationally ranked. What's your goal to end this year?
I'd like to stay. Personal goals. I'd like to bring my rank up nationally and in the conference. That would be a big thing for me.
Yep.
Pro wise, I'd like to make a couple showings. First place would be great, but this is all new to me, and I've played against some of the pros last year. They're pretty freaking amazing. I got a lot of work to do, but the reason I decided to do it is I get to play with them more, and that's going to pull me up to their level.
Absolutely.
Rather than, I've been playing, this whole summer. I dedicated myself this last summer to just playing Maine tournaments as much as possible, as long as there was one. But Maine's a little behind in a sense. I mean, we've got our really good players, but beyond that, it's a little bit behind. So it's wasn't really getting the competition I wanted or needed throughout the summer. But at the same time, if we don't populate our tournaments, we're not going to have them. So.
For anybody listening who wants to go catch one of these tournaments live, where are some of the places they can go either go watch it or where can they check out the schedule and see upcoming tournaments?
Well, the biggest thing with cornhole is not the greatest spectator sport, but it is. I think the reason it's so successful is the fact that it's kind of like a player-spectator sport where you can come and play and watch.
Right.
And anyone can do it. Like, you can literally go to the next ACL regional and play if you wanted to. It's open to anybody. You put your name in, you don't have to pay a penny, you can go and play, and you can start getting ranked and find your spot in those rankings. I would say, I mean, if you want to come watch, we play turfs on Thursday nights, but if you watch, you're going to want to play. We play turfs. We have a turf leagues Thursday nights. The next session starts in 2 weeks from now. Anyone's welcome. We have divisions, basically. So wherever we play the first week or two, where we kind of split people up into divisions, and then you play the rest of the season there. And then there's 3 different divisions at the end for the playoffs, and it's all cash-based money payouts. And then we do a blind draw after that at around 8:30, which anyone can come. You don't have to be part of the league. So
very cool. So anyone interested, there you go. If you want to break into the cornhole
scene, I can tell you.
There it is.
Yeah, or get in touch with me, man.
Absolutely.
There's also I read a page called Maine Cornhole, so add yourself to that if you have any interest whatsoever. I post as many tournaments as I can there, information, whatever you need to know.
Perfect.
If you're looking for the hard-hitting journalistic questions, you're in the wrong place. It's Ethan Asks Big Time Questions on Big Time, the podcast.
All right, so we got a couple segments to bang through here before we get up out of here. We're going to hop into our first one here. So our buddy, our executive producer of the pod, Ethan Raymond, has a segment called Ethan Asks Big Time Questions.
Ethan.
All right, round one of Ethan Asks Big Time Questions on Big Time the Podcast. Ethan, what is your question?
So I know that you went pro recently in Cornhole and that you've been playing competitively in leagues and tournaments pretty much all over the place for the last few years. When it comes to backyard games like that, like horseshoes and beer die and cornhole and things like that, there's probably a lot of guys out there that think they can get to that level, especially after they've had a few beers in them, can challenge anybody at the party and win, and think they have what it takes. But really, how much time and effort and practice does it take to get to the level where you can actually make something with this and win tournaments and go pro? I'm sure it's no easy feat. Just like anything else, I'm sure it takes an incredible amount of time. So how much have you had to work at this to get to the pro level? And when are we going to see your face on ESPN 8 The Ocho?
There we go. Great question from Ethan.
I'm working on the Ocho. That's gonna give me. I said 5 years to become pro. It took me a year, so I'm gonna say about 5 years to be on the Ocho. That doesn't mean it's gonna be a year, but I'll try. And then I don't know. We talked about it earlier. I've spent spans of time where I've played, 8 to 9 hours a day, and recently I've been spending some time, taking some time off a little bit. The whole pro thing changed the game for me in my own mind. It was a backyard sport. I loved to just go out there and destroy people, in the backyard and have a blast with it. And now it's a different thing, different level of focus. So I've been kind of taking my breaks here and there, but also putting in, my good 7-hour days here and there.
Practice makes perfect, ladies and gentlemen, even when it comes to cornhole.
Hells yeah.
All right.
Sounds so funny when you put it that way.
Gonna get to round two of Ethan Asks Big Time Questions.
So I think I've seen on some Facebook posts of yours over the years that you're a big puts-in fan, or as the weirdos call it, poutine. And I know that the Valley has some of the best puts-ins out there. It's pretty much a homeland staple. But there's been some other ones popping up in Portland, some other restaurants that have it, and other places that I've been, even out in California. I've been to a couple places that kind of have it as their main food on the menu. So in a world where a poutine is becoming popular, where is the best one you've ever had? If you could have one poutine in front of you right now, where would it be from?
That's a great question.
Only you, Ethan. Only you. I have to say, this is kind of messed up, man. Greco Donaire.
Ooh.
Has got an amazing one, but little known secret. McDonald's in Edmundston has a pretty good poutine.
It's true.
And yes, I said McDonald's in Edmundston.
Yeah.
But I think Greco, man, I don't know. They just have the curd cheese, and their gravy is not really chicken, and it's not really beef, and it's not really anything. I don't know. And then on top of that, I guess the Tasty Freeze has a pretty amazing one. But they don't use the curd cheese, so that puts them a level down for me.
I feel like you just can't go wrong with any of those. I'd take any one of those right there. I'd take any one of those right now. Yeah.
I know. It's a really bad time for that question.
From the land of Donaire and Poutine, it's time to sort fact from fiction. Live on location, it's Charlito Wonders. On Big Time, the podcast.
All right, gonna get to our second segment, Big Bro Charlito with Charlito Wonders on Big Time. Let's see what Charlie's wondering today.
Yo, John Clavette, what up, dude? It's Charlito out here in Halifax. Just wondering, what's the Clavette hierarchy? Are they known as John Clavette's siblings, or are you known as Pete's brother, Drew's brother, Liz's brother? And are you the oldest? Like, going by hairlines, I think that's Andrew's the oldest? No, man. You got a good athletic crew out there. Wish you would have taught them to pass the damn ball, those damn ball hogs. Except for Liz, she's cool. All right, man. You gave me one of the most sincere I love yous when I lived in Portland. brothers for life. Keep up the cornhole thing, man. All right, take it easy, my dude. One love.
So what's the hierarchy here with the Clavettes?
Anytime I've hung out with any of my brothers or sisters and they introduced me to anybody, they didn't even realize I existed. So, that's all I know, man. I'm not part of the hierarchy. I was kind of a black sheepish creature in all of that.
I'm the same way. I'm the black sheep with us too. It's
Yeah.
I'm at the bottom, which is fine. I got some.
No,
cool
I found
siblings,
out about you last, Tom. So
Yeah, I know. That's how it is. And I'm fine with that. I got some cool siblings, so they can have it. It's fine. I got the podcast. So I'm doing all right.
yeah. It's not even incognito's not a bad place to be, man.
No, not at all.
No.
I hope everyone had a good time. Because things are going to get serious for a moment. It's time to talk death on Big Time, the podcast.
All right. So our last segment of the pod before we get up out of here, it's the serious question here. It's called "When You Die, What Jersey Do You Want to Be Buried In?" So you've got some different choices. You've got the high school basketball, soccer jersey. You can go with the cornhole jersey if there is a jersey you wear for cornhole. Which one means the most to you, and which one would you take to the grave with you?
Oh, that's a tough question. Any jersey or any jersey I've worn?
Any jersey you've worn.
Okay, any jersey I've worn. Well, I haven't worn my pro jersey for cornhole yet, so.
Well, I mean, we could use that hypothetically. If that's the one that means the most to you, or if that sport you and that sport is what means the most to you, you could take that one.
Probably, yeah. I would probably go with the cornhole pro jersey. Yeah,
Can't
if I
go
had
wrong.
to.
I mean, if you've reached the highest level, I mean, if you have your pro card, I mean, it's kind of tough to pass that up.
Yeah. Well, not just that; it's the most recent, so it's most meaningful to me at this point. I haven't played basketball and soccer in so many years that it's there were moments, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. And you're asking me the question now, so I'd have to say, cornhole.
Easy enough. Can't go against that. I'd say the same thing too. All right, before we get up out of here, is there anything that you want to say? Are there any rumors you want to address? Is there anything you want to get off your chest? Is there anything you want to clear the air on? This is your chance to say what you got to say before we get up out of here.
All I can say is I don't speak very good English, but I do the best that I am.
That works right there. We'll take that. So just want to thank John for coming on the pod today. Like I said, this is a big deal. We don't get professional athletes on the pod every day. So that means that
it is cornhole.
It is cornhole, but it's still the professional circuit. So Big Time's doing big things because we got pro athletes. So thank you to John for coming through. If you guys want to, absolutely. If you guys want to follow him, go check him out. Or if you guys are trying to break into cornhole, definitely check him out at those places he mentioned. Thank you for listening. Make sure to tune in next time for another big episode of Big Time the podcast. But that's it for now. We will see you next time.